Hollywood previously shined with lights, red carpets, and stars hailed as blemish-free icons. But Paul Newman previously candidly revealed a truth that shocked the entire industry beyond the smile and golden Oscars. Most bore darkness, much more frightening than any of their villainous characters they portrayed on screen. He referred to starlet mothers who made their children into victims, strong actors who seduced minor girls into closed rooms, and giants who slugged with punches that sent coworkers crashing on location. These were no longer script roles, but offenses Hollywood had hidden for decades. And in the list, Newman revealed the final name is sure to send a chill down your spine. Errol Flynn, the dashing Robin Hood on trial for charges with 2 girls. In the late 1930s, when The Adventures of Robin Hood premiered, millions of viewers worldwide rushed to theaters to see a youthful Flynn. His radiant smile, mischievous eyes, and unmatched adventurous charm made him a sensation. Photoplay magazine then referred to him as the man that every woman adored and every man wished to be. But under this dazzling aura, Flynn's actual life was engulfed in raucous rumors, whispers ranging from Beverly Hills to Sunset Strip. The climax was in 1942, when he was tried in Los Angeles for charges against 2 underage girls. The Los Angeles Examiner splashed it on front pages for months, even going so far as to print a fiery headline, "Robin Hood in the dock." In court, prosecutors painted pictures of scenes within a Hollywood Hills luxury apartment where Flynn frequently threw parties that ran all night. The Daily News quoted a confidential witness as saying the room was always thick with smoke and loud laughter. Flynn strode in like royalty, accompanied by faces too young to comprehend such extravagance. The trial attracted standing room only the fans, the press, even foreign correspondents. But in the end, Flynn was acquitted. Striding out of court, he lit a cigarette and smirked. The ladies will still love this Robin Hood. That observation reached Paul Newman's ears, and he later confided to friends, "I had never seen arrogance so naked." Flynn walked free, wearing his defiance. Variety called it Robin Hood's triumph over justice. But all within Hollywood were well aware that behind the acquittal was a whole web of power from major studios such as Warner Brothers to reporters who were willing to remain mum in an effort to shield a lucrative star. Although acquitted, Flynn continued to be hounded by insatiable rumors. In 1945, reporter Sheila Graham of the Hollywood Citizen News penned, "If the walls of Errol Flynn's mansion could talk, they would tell stories Hollywood would never want to hear." Rumors continued that in his Mulholland Drive mansion, Flynn held days-long parties during which wine flowed like rivers, and most attendees were girls far too young to know they were risking danger in entering. A chilling insight was revealed in the memoir of a nameless servant who wrote, "I once saw Flynn strong-arm guests into singing until he was pleased. Anyone who refused was thrown out immediately, even blacklisted from any engagement where Flynn worked." It never could be proved, but it added depth to the image of a man at once seductive and terrifying. Flynn's death in 1959 appeared to be a curse on the life he had lived. Only 50 years old, he passed away in Vancouver, Canada, after reportedly fleeing debts and rumors that never seemed to stop. The coroner's report indicated his body was that of a man more than 70. People were shocked, and the New York Post published a caustic headliner. "Robin Hood dead leaves behind a legacy of films and secrets." What sent shivers down people's spines was that in spite of the shadows, Hollywood still made Flynn legendary. The dashing, heroic Robin Hood persona was preserved, and the darkness behind it buried under layers of silence. But Errol Flynn was not alone. Concomitantly, there was a star with an even saintly persona. But behind that angelic beauty was a cold mother who sent shivers down everyone around her. That was Joan Crawford. Paul Newman once reclined in a wood chair for a 1979 interview with the New York Times. His eyes glared hard at the interviewer, causing the Manhattan room to grow dense. He spoke in his deep voice, "Never believe an Oscar can cover up the darkness within a family." Joan Crawford, he claimed, was the most obvious evidence. America caught its breath one March evening in 1946 as Crawford, wearing a spotless white satin gown, took the stage to accept the Oscar for Mildred Pierce. The auditorium sparkled, and Variety blazoned across its front page, "Hollywood's Queen Reborn." But mere hours later in her Brentwood mansion, that radiance became a horror. A maid, whose testimony was subsequently brought out by the Los Angeles Daily News in 1981, disclosed that immediately after the party, Crawford pulled her adopted daughter Christina, who was 11 years old at the time, out of bed. She made the child stand in front of a mirror and sing the American national anthem. When Christina lost her way, a cruel slap sent her tumbling to the marble floor. That stinging crack resonated in the house. "I still hear it in my dreams," the witness explained. Christina herself later talked of her childhood in Mommy Dearest as a gilded hell. Hangers in the closet became whips. Ashtrays filled with glass became weapons. A classmate remembered in an ABC News special, "In sweltering July heat, Christina still wore long sleeves. When I asked, she whispered, 'My mother doesn't want anyone to see the bruises.'" The abuse extended past beatings. Crawford put an hourglass in her daughter's bedroom, making Christina stand still until all the grains dropped. When it toppled over, the consequence was doubled. A diary entry by a housemaid that was leaked mentioned, "Once she made Christina kneel before a crucifix in the living room for hours, screaming, 'You should thank God for having me as your mother.' It was like a grotesque ritual within a mansion." The barbarity was in the contrast. Hollywood blessed Crawford as the ideal mother. Life magazine even put her on the cover with her adopted children in May 1950. But photographer Lawrence Schiller recalled that before the photo shoot, Christina had been beaten so severely her comb broke. A few minutes later, she was made to smile broadly for the camera. The horror persisted even after Crawford's death in 1977. At the Manhattan Will reading, the room went numb as the attorney read the chilling sentence. For reasons which they well know, Christina and Christopher, the children who suffered most, were cut from millions in inheritance. It was labeled the coldest will in Hollywood history by the Washington Post. A lawyer who was there whispered, "It was the only time I saw a mother seek revenge against her children even after death." Paul Newman, speaking to Esquire, stated that Crawford might have been a queen on screen, but at home she was a tyrant. The most frightening thing, he elaborated, was that she was still finding ways to punish her children even in death. In 1952, a young actress fighting to get a part at Paramount Studios talked to Newman in a secret meeting. Her voice trembled with fear. "Kirk Douglas did something to me. No one will believe me if I speak. He's untouchable." Newman never forgot those words. To everyone, Douglas was the brave gladiator in Spartacus, the rough exterior of American masculinity. But behind the camera, dozens of whispers painted a much darker story. One of the most haunting stories came from Natalie Wood's circle. Rumors that Kirk Douglas assaulted Natalie when she was still a teenager circulated for decades. Although the encounter was concealed behind the veil of Hollywood secrecy, Wood's sister Lana subsequently intimated in interviews that Natalie's entire lifetime of trust issues and depression may have been traced back to a frightening run-in with Douglas. In the 1980s, Douglas had denied all charges, yet the discomfort never dissipated. In 2018, when Natalie Wood's death flared again in the media, rumors about Douglas returned. A retired MGM secretary admitted to the Daily Mail, "We all knew he was dangerous. Beautiful women steered clear of being alone with him. But the studio instructed us to guard him at all costs. He was their golden star." Paul Newman himself never specifically mentioned Douglas in public, but indicated in a 1987 interview, "Some men I worked with took their violence off-screen. They believed stardom conferred immunity. One of them is still honored today, but if the truth were known, his statues would topple." Those who had known Newman in private said he was talking about Kirk Douglas. Douglas's own memoir, The Ragman's Son, 1988, showed flashes of arrogance and entitlement. He acknowledged numerous affairs, at times boasting about bullying women into bed. He wrote, "I was aggressive with women. I pursued what I wanted, maybe too aggressively." Critics observed the menacing undertone of his words. Hollywood defended him fiercely. Even when rumors of abuse broke out on the set of Lust for Life in 1956, when a co-star purportedly complained of his conduct, MGM shut her up with a buyout. Trade publications buried the news. Douglas emerged unscathed, his reputation undamaged. The disparity between his on-screen bravery and his purported off-screen exploitation left scars on those who knew him. Most of the women never publicly spoke out, lest their careers be destroyed. But their silence howled in private letters, diaries, and confessions to friends. By the 1990s, when Douglas was being given a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Oscars, some in Hollywood clapped with gritted teeth. One screenwriter whispered to The Hollywood Reporter it was paying respect to a man whose victims were sitting in their homes, invisible. Newman's words held power because he knew both sides of Hollywood. Of Kirk Douglas, he once stated in a 1984 private soiree, he was Spartacus on the screen, but off-screen he enslaved women in fear. That's the role no one mentions. Following Douglas, Newman's roll call of Hollywood's most despised turned to another surprise individual. Not a timeless legend, but arguably the greatest mogul of all time. A man who manipulated strings from behind the scenes, dictating the destiny of actors and actresses with one phone call. That man was Harry Cohn. Referred to as the king of Hollywood tyranny, Harry Cohn developed Columbia Pictures into a giant, but his approach frightened almost everyone who worked for him. Newman himself once called him a gangster in a suit. Cohn's office at Columbia was feared. Stars shuddered to be called in. Actresses would whisper that if you received a call from Cohn, you either went out with a contract or in tears. He was infamous for making sexual demands in return for parts. Actress Kim Novak once intimated Cohn's stranglehold on her without ever disclosing the most sinister details. A producer revealed in a 1979 autobiography, Cohn screamed, threatened, and embarrassed stars every day. He called Rita Hayworth a stupid broad to her face, even when she was Columbia's biggest box office draw. He'd enter a set, and people would freeze. The atmosphere would turn to ice. There were plenty of enemies of Cohn. Hundreds went to his funeral when he passed away in 1958. Screenwriter Ben Hecht famously said, "Give the people what they want." And apparently, what they wanted was Harry Cohn dead. It is rumored that Columbia's staff privately celebrated after his death, relieved from decades of fear. Newman, looking back at Cohn in the late 70s, said he was proof that Hollywood power wasn't about art but about control. People kissed his ring while cursing his name behind his back. He wasn't loved, only feared. And sometimes fear builds empires. Following Cohn, Newman's tone became deeper as he spoke of the last name on his secret list. Not only a star, not only a mogul, but a man whose power transcended politics, movies, and society, a man whose shadows went far beyond the silver screen. Howard Hughes. To the world, Hughes was the reclusive billionaire, aviation innovator, and movie producer who was seen with the world's most beautiful women. But Newman was different. Howard Hughes was a spider, he said to a reporter in 1981. He ensnared people in his web and bled them.